Players of board games living in beautiful Bloomington, Indiana have the luck of being able to rely on two great friendly local game stores. And they cater to slightly different audiences, different needs, and so on and so forth. But one of them has a section for second-hand games that they sell at reduced prices. And I really like that section, not just because I get affordable games there, but also because I get to learn about games that I didn't know about, that may have escaped my radar. And that's how I crossed paths with Arkadia. I found it there, I'd never heard of it. It looked neat, the price was very reasonable, so I decided, what the heck, I'll give it a try. Arkadia is a Eurogamer's Eurogame. If you Google Eurogame, this should be one of those that shows up. I would say it's almost quintessentially Eurogamey. The theme is Eurogamey already. You're building stuff and investing resources. In this case, you're building a fictional city. But in so many Eurogames, the theme is not really the thing, is not the point. The game is pretty much a geometric visual puzzle, Tetris-like almost, while also having an element, of course, of investment, and I would say progressive investment. To me, one of the key elements that make a game a Eurogame is you collect a resource that lets you get another resource, that you trade for another resource, and that will generate victory points or another resource. This is what the game is precisely about. You're collecting resources, placing pieces on the board to build a city and a castle in the middle of the city. And at the end of the game, the money that you were able by collecting and trading resources is what will determine who the winner is. Let's take a closer look at Arkadia. This is the board of the game, which I think looks absolutely beautiful, and it is also very functional. We have this element here that indicates the place where we're going to build a castle in the game. At the beginning of the game, during setup, you place it on the board anywhere in the central area, as long as it does not cover one of these settlements. As you can see, you have a little bit of freedom there as to where to place the castle. Then other elements in the game, we have these plastic elements here, which represent the sections of the castle that we're going to build. Each player has a player screen that they use to store their stuff. You keep your cards behind that screen. Also, you have workers that will go there. The screen also holds, look how adorable this is, 4 banners that will be used during the game to perform a special action. Other elements, tiles that represent the buildings that we're going to build in the city around the castle, cards that we're going to use to build those buildings, seals that we gain when we complete buildings, and money that represents pretty much victory points. Now, during your turn, you must perform one of two actions. That is, you must either play a building card and place the corresponding building on the board, or you add workers from your personal pool to the play area. You must do one of those two, either play a card and add a building, or add workers. After that, you may, it's not mandatory, use one of the banners to pretty much do what is called in the rulebook, get an evaluation, which I would rather define as cash in. You get money based on how much you worked on the board and on the popularity that you gained in town, and that will be based on the number of seals of various guilds, various families that you have been able to collect. But one thing at a time. Suppose that you have decided to start a building, then you play a card from your hand. And suppose I want to play this card. And you discard it. Also, you'll refill your hand with a card here from a pool of available ones, or you will draw the top one blindly from a deck. So you play a card, you take a building that corresponds to the building represented on the card. Like here we had a 2-square straight building. And also you saw there is a color here which is red, and you also take a seal of the corresponding family. When you're placing a building, it must be attached by at least one side, not just a corner, to the castle and or to a previous building. If by adding a building on the board, you're covering one of those settlements, like that would be the case, you also get a neutral worker and you place it in your personal area behind your screen. After you place your building, you add a seal of the family that was indicated here. You refill your hand, and that would be my turn. Suppose that the next turn, another player plays this card, and now they're taking this piece here. Anybody who has ever played Tetris probably has a sort of like love-hate relationship with this type of piece. And suppose this player decides to put it here, so they also get a neutral worker because of the settlement that they covered, and they place a green seal there, and so on and so forth. And maybe next time this is what happens. Now, what happens when you place workers? Instead of placing a building, you place a worker. Also, because actually we said place a building, in truth it means that you have started the building. A building is completed only when all of its edges, that is, the squares adjacent to the sides, are covered either by other buildings and or by workers. Your action to add workers to the board means that when you take that action, you choose any one building and you add any number of neutral and or personal workers around that building. For example, I could choose as my action, because I selected that building, to do like this. Done. Or suppose I decide to do the same action, to add workers to the board, but I select this building and then I place a neutral guy here and a personal guy there. Now, this building is complete because, as you can see, all of the sides are covered by workers and or buildings. When that happens, the players that have personal workers around the building that was just completed get seals of the color on the building equal to the number of personal workers. For example, I would get one red seal for having one of my personal workers there. Moreover, the active player, the player whose action caused the building to be completely surrounded, will get the seal which is actually on the board. And then when you take those seals, you place them behind your screen. Important thing, the workers stay there for the rest of the game, so placing personal workers in a position that will allow you to score them several times is particularly important. For example, that single one will allow me to get a seal when that building is complete and when that building is completed, for example. When a building is completed, also the active player gets to take one of these sections of the castle and to add it to the castle. In the first phase of the game, when we're building the first floor, the tiles for the castle are taken from here. And you place one on any of these spaces. You do not have to match the color that you see there. Suppose we built a couple of buildings, and now the first floor, let's look in something like that. When the first floor is completed, there will be two of these tiles that will be left, and they will be placed in that section of the board there. And then we're going to start building the second floor. Same thing, after we build the second floor, two of these sections of the castle will be left over and will be placed there. When the second floor is completed, the end of the game is triggered. That is, each player gets one more turn. That's why we have some extra ones in case people will build some part of the castle on the third floor, but the third floor may not get to be completed. At the end of that phase, that is one turn for every player after the second floor was completed, the game is over. We score one last time, and then we see who is the winner. But we're talking about the payout, about the cashing in that gives you money. That is the optional action that you can take in your turn after you added a building or you add the workers. That optional action, you spend a banner, so you can take that action only 4 times during the game. Plus, there is a fifth scoring, a fifth payout phase during the final scoring. When you spend a banner to cash in based on what you have done, well, first you will get 2 personal workers from a general pool back into behind your screen, and then you get to convert the seals that you collected into coins. This is really neat. So you can convert any and all of the seals that you have collected into coins. The value of each seal behind your screen is equal to the number of seals of the same color which are presently actually visible in the castle. So each red seal right now is worth 2 coins. Each black seal is worth 3 coins. Each green seal, green is a weird color between green and gold, but each is worth 3. That's why selecting and placing the sections of the castle is so important, because I want to have a lot of seals that I own behind my screen to be represented and visible in the castle. In the meanwhile, I'm paying attention to the seals that you are collecting, and I'm trying to cover as many of those as possible. Ideally, I'm also trying to diversify so I can hurt you while I'm giving myself an advantage. But that is not always possible, so there are times where I know you have some of those seals, but I have a little more, and I decide I'm still gonna score, and so I'm still gonna support that color, of which I have a lot, and you have some. When you will score, that will still give an advantage, but it's better than nothing. And ideally, I'm covering all of your seals and giving a lot of representation to mine. When that doesn't work, alas, well, you do what you can, and you don't get upset. So you continue like this until 2 floors have been built. One last round. During the game, players will have scored their banners, so that is converted seals into money. Yeah, by the way, yeah, when you determine the value, then you get the corresponding number of things. Say I am converting 2 of my red seals, so they're worth 2 coins each, so I got 4 coins. So at the end of the game, everybody gets one last round of scoring. That is one last chance to convert the seals that they have into money. And at that point, the player with the most money in their personal pool is the winner of the game. Arkadia is a very solid Euro game. I find it well designed, and that to me is all the most remarkable when one considers that it puts together elements that are very different from one another. The geometrical puzzle on the board with the investment element, with the manipulation, I would say almost manipulation of the stock market, that is we are thinking about the changing value of the seals depending on how many are visible on the castle. So you're manipulating these elements, the numerical values, some resources, while also making a puzzle there and trying to figure out of how the other players, of course, are going about doing the same thing. Well, these elements could easily make a design feel disjointed, but luckily enough, this is not what happens here. I found that the different moving gears of the design go together very well, and they make for a very smooth, very interesting interaction. In fact, when it comes to Eurogames, a complaint that you will hear from time to time is that there isn't enough interaction. Here there is interaction within the design, in the sense of how one thing smoothly leads to another, but then really a lot of interaction among players, even more direct interaction that you have in many other Eurogames, in which the main way of quote-unquote attacking another player is by taking resources that you know they will on by creating scarcity. Here is much more confrontational. It's not like, well, I get to that spot before you do and I take that thing that I know you need. It's like, no, I'm actively reducing the value of stuff that you were so hard to collect. I'm actively placing the worker there just to be a pain in the neck to you because I know that that's exactly where I want to play your worker next, or because that's going to allow me to vampirically suck all the points that you were planning to score on a certain building that I know you want to get next. So there is that very interesting, very fluid element which feels very tactical, very intense with two players, which is actually the only version in which I played the game. I do not know that I'll play with more people because I really liked it with two players. And with more people, then I guess that then when the game comes back to you, so many things may have changed that you will find yourself a little more at the mercy of, I wouldn't say luck, but uncontrollable factors that escape your control. This way, with two players, I can try to read yourself, or read you, my opponent, as you try to read me, and I get a good sense of what might or might not happen. I do not have perfect control yet, but I get a sense of being able to establish more or less what might happen, and I'm able then to make interesting decisions about it. And of course, making interesting, informed decisions or fun, educated guesses is a big draw, big reason of interest of why we play board games. It doesn't hurt the experience that the game looks really good. And not only that, to me, it's an example of a specific kind of aesthetic of board games. We have board games that look beautiful simply because of the beauty of the components, and here the components, especially the castle blocks, do look attractive. But then I would say that there is another type of aesthetics also, which is simply based on the fact that because of the rules, the components are going to be placed on the board in a certain configuration and not another. That also comes to create certain visual patterns that are just pleasant to look at. An example is Santorini. Santorini, when you look at every block in the game, those are cute enough. But then if you were just playing with those play sets, scattering things around, maybe the overall ensemble, the final result wouldn't be all that pleasant as it is when you're placing the pieces on the board following certain rules. So something similar happens here as you have to make a building grow out of another building because of the adjacent rules, as you're trying again to spread out organically, as you're trying to complete or surround or envelop areas with your workers or with other buildings. I found that there was almost like a visually rhythmic element there that I personally enjoyed. So it adds to that, to the fact that gameplay is fun, which of course is key. But again, a game that looks beautiful at the level of the components, that looks beautiful at the level of the organic composition that it creates. That is interesting added value. But back to gameplay. Gameplay is fun, and I find it to be rewarding, without at the same time being excessively involved. I was a little bit worried about, get this, to trade into seals and spend the banners to do that other thing, etc, etc. But then actually after half a turn, things felt very intuitive. Even if you're playing it with somebody who is not a hardcore Eurogamer, you're gonna have no problem whatsoever. And to me, this is a big value, because we have a thinking game that does reward planning and strategizing, does reward good gameplay, while at the same time not giving me a brain burn, not giving me a headache. I would say it gets, again, it's rewarding and gets me to think, and it stops just a couple or 10 or 15 steps before getting burdensome, before the thinking turns out to be a chore rather than part of the fun. So Arkadia, I'm so glad that I got to learn about this game, because it is a fun, enjoyable game. I played it only with adults, but I think fairly soon, heck, maybe even earlier than I know, I'd be able to play it with my daughters. They're growing fast, and I'm playing a lot of games with them, so I'm doing some training there. they're way wiser than their age when it comes to games. So definitely a game that it's more than a casual game because there's thinking involved, but not a hardcore game by any means. It's like middle of the road. Actually, it has, I think, a nice balance between complexity and strategy on one hand, and then simplicity and beauty of components, which is something that you often find in casual gateway games. So something for everybody, for new gamers that wanna move a step past, say, Ticket to Ride or Carcassonne, or at the same time something that hardcore gamers will be able to enjoy if they just decide to take it a little easier for one evening. Arkadia, not a new game, but one that I personally enjoyed, and I thought I would share some opinions and ideas with you in case there's a game that you did not know, and now that you know, maybe you think it's a game that you can add to your collection or to your pool of options for game night. Arkadia, overall, a good game, a very good game, and one that I think can be enjoyed by many types of players.